In a busy city where life never seemed to slow down, there lived a policeman named John. He was in his mid-30s, with a strong build and a face that showed years of hard work under the sun. People often described him as dedicated and fair, someone who took pride in keeping the streets safe. But little did anyone know, including John himself, that one ordinary day would change his life forever, and not in a way he could have ever predicted. It all started on a Friday afternoon, just as the clock struck 4. The roads were packed, with cars honking impatiently, their drivers eager to get home after a long week at work. John was patrolling near one of the busiest intersections in the city. His job was simple: ensure traffic flowed smoothly and prevent accidents. It sounded easy enough, but anyone who had worked in such chaos knew it wasn't. The air smelled of exhaust fumes mixed with the faint scent of street food from nearby stalls. Pedestrians hurried across zebra crossings while others waited for the green light. That's when he saw her. A young girl standing at the edge of the sidewalk looking hesitant. She couldn't have been more than 10 years old. Her curly hair framed her face and she wore a bright yellow dress that made her stand out among the crowd. Something about the way she moved caught John's attention. She didn't walk like other kids. Instead, each step seemed deliberate, almost labored. It was clear she had some kind of physical challenge, though John didn't know exactly what it was at first glance. The traffic light turned red, signaling vehicles to stop. Most pedestrians began crossing the road, but the girl remained frozen, in place, clutching a small teddy bear tightly against her chest. When the light changed again, signaling them to wait, she suddenly stepped forward. Not because she noticed the signal, but perhaps because she finally mustered the courage to move. John's heart skipped a beat. Cars were already revving their engines, ready to speed off the moment the light turned green. Without thinking twice, John jumped out of his patrol car. "Hey, stop!" he shouted, waving his arms to warn the approaching vehicles. But the girl didn't hear him, or maybe she couldn't process the urgency in his voice quickly enough. As she shuffled into the middle of the road, John sprinted toward her, determined to pull her back to safety. Time slowed down as he reached her, grabbing her arm gently yet firmly. But in his rush, his momentum caused both of them to lose balance. They tumbled onto the asphalt together, narrowly avoiding being hit by a speeding truck. The girl cried out in pain, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her knees were scraped and her hands bore fresh cuts from the fall. Passers-by stopped to see what had happened, some offering help, others snapping photos with their phones. John knelt beside her, his uniform now dusty and disheveled. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice filled with genuine concern. "Are you okay? Can you tell me your name?" Through sobs, the girl managed to whisper, "Lily." John helped her sit up carefully, checking for any serious injuries. Thankfully, nothing seemed broken, but Lily was visibly shaken. He called for backup and requested an ambulance just to be safe. While waiting, he stayed by her side, talking softly to calm her down. "You're going to be all right," he reassured her. "This is my fault, and I'll make sure you get home safely." What John didn't realize at the time was that this seemingly routine accident carried consequences far beyond what he could imagine. Unbeknownst to him, Lily wasn't just any child. Her father was a high-ranking officer in the FBI, known for his sharp mind and unyielding sense of justice. And once news of the incident reached him, everything would spiral out of control. For John, for Lily, and for everyone involved. As the paramedics arrived and loaded Lily into the ambulance, John couldn't shake off the feeling that something monumental was about to unfold. He watched as the vehicle drove away, its siren wailing faintly in the distance. Little did he know, this single act of carelessness would test his character, challenge his career, and force him to confront questions about accountability and forgiveness. What began as a split-second decision to save a life was about to become a story that no one in the city would soon forget. By the time Lily was taken to the hospital, word of the accident had already reached her father. He was a man in his late 40s, with sharp eyes that seemed to notice every detail, and a calm demeanor that masked the intensity within. People, who knew him described him as someone who didn't tolerate carelessness, especially when it came to protecting those he loved. His name was Robert, and he worked for the FBI, handling some of the most sensitive cases in the country. But at home, he was just a dad, fiercely protective of his daughter. When Robert got the call from his wife about what happened, his world stopped. "She's okay," she assured him over the phone, though her voice trembled slightly. "But she's hurt, and she's scared." That was all Robert needed to hear. Within minutes, he left his office, his mind racing with questions. Who was this officer? Why hadn't he been more careful? And how could something like this happen to his little girl? Robert arrived at the hospital shortly after Lily did. She was sitting on a bed in the emergency room, her legs bandaged and her face pale but composed. Seeing her like that broke his heart. For years, he'd done everything in his power to shield her from harm. Her cerebral palsy made life challenging enough without adding unnecessary pain or fear into the mix. Yet here she was, bruised and shaken because of someone else's actions, or lack thereof. "Sweetheart," Robert said softly as he approached, her kneeling beside the bed so they were eye to eye. "Tell me what happened." Lily hesitated before speaking. "I wanted to cross the street," she began, clutching her teddy bear tightly. "The cars weren't moving, so I thought it was safe. Then, I don't know. Everything got loud and I fell." Robert listened intently, nodding occasionally to encourage her to continue. When she finished, he kissed her forehead gently. "You're brave," he told her, "and we'll figure this out together." Though his tone was gentle, there was steel beneath it, a promise to himself that whoever was responsible wouldn't get away easily. Later that evening, once Lily was discharged and resting at home, Robert sat down with his wife to discuss next steps. They both agreed that while Lily seemed physically fine, the emotional scars might take longer to heal. More than anything, they wanted answers. So the following morning, Robert decided to visit the police station where the officer involved in the incident worked. Walking into the precinct felt surreal. As an FBI agent, Robert was no stranger to law enforcement environments, but this time, he wasn't there as a colleague. He was there as a father seeking justice. The receptionist directed him to the sergeant in charge, who promptly arranged a meeting with Officer John, the man involved in the accident. When Robert entered the room where John waited, the tension was palpable. John stood up immediately, his expression a mixture of guilt and apprehension. "Sir," he began, extending his hand cautiously, "I'm truly sorry about what happened to your daughter. It was never my intention to hurt her." Robert ignored the handshake and sat down across from him, his gaze unwavering. "Let's start from the beginning," he said firmly. "Explain to me exactly what happened." John recounted the events of that day, the crowded intersection, Lily stepping into the road unexpectedly, and his desperate attempt to pull her back to safety. "I swear I only wanted to protect her," he insisted, his voice cracking slightly. "If I could go back and do things differently, I would." For a moment, Robert studied him, searching for any sign of dishonesty. But what he saw instead was genuine remorse. Still, it wasn't enough to quell the anger simmering inside him. This wasn't just about Lily. It was about accountability. If officers couldn't handle situations involving vulnerable individuals responsibly, then who could people trust? After the meeting, Robert returned home deep in thought. On one hand, he believed John's apology was sincere. On the other hand, letting him off without consequences felt wrong. Over dinner, he shared his dilemma with his wife. "He seems regretful," he admitted. "But regret doesn't undo what happened." His wife nodded slowly. "Do you think punishing him will make Lily feel better?" she asked quietly. "Or is there another way to handle this?" Her question lingered in the air, forcing Robert to reconsider his approach. Maybe vengeance wasn't the answer. Maybe there was a path forward that prioritized healing over retribution. But even as he entertained the idea, he knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, for anyone. Meanwhile, news of the incident spread quickly through the community. Local reporters picked up the story, painting John as reckless and uncaring. Social media exploded with opinions, some siding with Lily and her family, others defending John as someone caught in an impossible situation. Caught in the middle of the storm, John found himself suspended pending further investigation. Stripped of his badge and gun, he spent sleepless nights replaying the accident in his mind, wondering if he'd ever regain the trust he'd lost. School Lily faced challenges too. Word of the accident reached her classmates and whispers followed her wherever she went. Some kids teased her, calling her clumsy or weak, while others avoided her altogether, unsure of what to say. It hurt, but Lily tried to stay strong. She remembered her dad telling her she was brave, and she clung to those words like a lifeline. One afternoon, while flipping through old photo albums with her mom, Lily stumbled upon pictures from a trip to the local police station years ago. Her dad had taken her there during a community outreach event, introducing her to officers who greeted her warmly and even let her sit in a patrol car. Looking at those images brought back memories of laughter and kindness, things she hadn't associated with police officers since the accident. That night, unable to sleep, Lily grabbed a pen and paper. Writing always helped her sort through her thoughts. Addressing the letter to John, she poured her heart onto the page. "Dear officer," she wrote, "I forgive you. I know you didn't mean to hurt me. I hope you can learn from this and become a better officer." When her parents read the letter the next morning, they were stunned. Forgiveness wasn't something they expected from Lily so soon, especially given everything she'd been through. But her words struck a chord with them, reminding them of the importance of compassion, even in the face of pain. Encouraged by Lily's gesture, Robert decided to meet John again, not as adversaries, but as two human beings looking for understanding. What transpired between them would shape not only their futures, but also the lives of countless others touched by the ripple effects of that fateful day. The days that followed Lily's accident were a whirlwind of emotions for everyone involved. For John, the officer at the center of the storm, life felt like it had been turned upside down. Suspended from duty and stripped of his badge, he spent most of his time alone in his small apartment, replaying the events over and over in his mind. He couldn't shake the image of Lily falling to the ground, her cries echoing in his ears. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, scared, hurt, and confused. It was a weight he carried everywhere, heavier than any uniform or responsibility he'd ever known. John wasn't the only one struggling. Robert, Lily's father, found himself caught between anger and uncertainty. On paper, seeking justice, for his daughter seemed straightforward. Punish the person responsible and ensure something like this never happened again. But as the days passed, doubts began creeping in. Was punishing John really going to make things better? Would it erase the fear in Lily's eyes or heal the scrapes on her knees? These questions gnawed at him, making sleep elusive and leaving him restless. At home, Lily tried to return to her normal routine, but it wasn't easy. School had become a minefield of whispers and stares. Some kids teased her about the accident, calling her clumsy or slow, while others avoided her altogether, unsure of what to say. The once friendly faces now seemed distant, and Lily often found herself eating lunch alone in a quiet corner of the cafeteria. Her teddy bear, the same one she'd clutched tightly during the accident, became her constant companion, a silent witness to her struggles. One evening, as Lily flipped through an old photo album with her mom, she stumbled upon pictures from a community event they'd attended years ago at the local police station. In the photos, Lily was smiling brightly, seated inside a patrol car while officers stood beside her grinning warmly. One picture showed her shaking hands with a female officer who knelt down to meet her at eye level. Those memories felt like they belonged to another lifetime, far removed from the chaos of recent weeks. Yet looking at them brought a strange sense of comfort. That night, unable to sleep, Lily grabbed a pen and paper. Writing had always helped her process her thoughts, and tonight she felt compelled to put her feelings into words. Addressing the letter to John, she wrote, "Dear officer, I forgive you. I know you didn't mean to hurt me. Accidents happen, and I believe you were trying to help. I hope you can learn from this and become a better officer. Thank you for saying. Sorry, it means a lot. When her parents read the letter the next morning, they were stunned. Forgiveness wasn't something they expected from Lily so soon, especially given everything she'd been through. Her dad, Robert, sat quietly at the kitchen table, staring at the neatly written lines. For a man who prided himself on being strong and decisive, these simple words forced him to confront the complexity of human emotions. Could forgiveness really be the key to moving forward? Encouraged by Lily's gesture, Robert decided to reach out to John again, not as adversaries but as two people searching for understanding. He called the police department and requested a meeting, specifying that he wanted it to be private and informal. The sergeant agreed, arranging for them to meet at a quiet cafe downtown later that week. On the day of the meeting, both men arrived feeling uneasy. John walked in first, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his shoulders hunched as if bracing for impact. A few minutes later, Robert entered, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater instead of his usual suit. The contrast was striking. This wasn't about authority or power. It was about humanity. They sat across from each other at a small wooden table, the hum of conversation around them fading into the background. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, John broke the silence. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," he said softly, his voice tinged with nervousness. I read your daughter's letter. It meant more to me than I can say." Robert nodded slowly, studying John's face. There was no trace of defiance or arrogance, just raw vulnerability. "Lily is stronger than she looks," he replied, after a pause. "She has a big heart even when it's hard to forgive." John swallowed hard, his eyes dropping to the table. "I've spent every night since the accident thinking about what I could have done differently. If I hadn't rushed, if I'd been more careful." His voice trailed off, heavy with regret. "I'll carry this with me for the rest of my life." Robert leaned back in his chair, letting the words sink in. "I'm not here to punish you," he said finally. "I came because I want to understand. What happened to Lily shouldn't define you, but it should teach you something." The conversation that followed was unlike anything either man had expected. They talked openly about their fears, frustrations, and hopes for the future. John shared how the suspension had left him questioning his career and whether he was cut out for the job. Robert admitted that his initial reaction had been driven by anger, but seeing Lily's resilience had made him rethink his approach. By the end of their discussion, the tension between them had softened, replaced by a mutual respect. As they parted ways outside the cafe, John extended his hand hesitantly. This time, Robert shook it firmly, offering a small smile. "Take care of yourself," he said, "and remember there's always room to grow." Back at home, Robert told Lily about the meeting. She listened intently, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think he'll be okay?" she asked quietly. "I think he will," Robert replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And I think we will too." What neither of them realized was that this meeting marked the beginning of a ripple effect that would extend far beyond their lives. Inspired by Lily's courage and compassion, conversations about improving interactions between law enforcement and disabled individuals gained momentum in the community. Local leaders organized workshops and training sessions aimed at fostering empathy and understanding. Slowly but surely, change began to take root. For John, the incident became a turning point. Determined to make amends, he volunteered at centers, supporting people with disabilities eager to learn and grow. And for Lily, forgiving John wasn't just an act of kindness. It was a step toward healing, proving that even in the darkest moments, humanity has the power to shine through. The days after the meeting at the cafe brought a mix of emotions for both John and Robert. For John, it felt like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders, but he knew this was only the beginning of a long journey toward redemption. He couldn't undo what had happened, but he could try to make things right, not just for Lily but for others who might face similar challenges in the future. Meanwhile, Robert found himself reflecting on the encounter more than he expected. He realized that while justice mattered, Compassion often carried a deeper, lasting impact. John started small. The very next week, he visited a local community center that worked with children and adults with disabilities. At first, he felt out of place, unsure of how to interact or whether he'd be welcomed. But as he walked through the doors, he was greeted by smiles, warm, genuine, and free of judgment. One of the volunteers introduced him to a young boy named Ethan, who used a wheelchair and loved talking about cars. They bonded quickly over their shared interest, and John spent hours listening to Ethan describe his dream of becoming a race car driver someday. These moments reminded John why he joined the police force in the first place: to help people, to make a difference. Over time, he began volunteering regularly at the center, assisting with activities and learning more about the unique needs of the individuals there. It wasn't always easy. He made mistakes, stumbled over words, and sometimes felt awkward. But the staff and participants appreciated his effort. Slowly, John started rebuilding not only his confidence but also his sense of purpose. Meanwhile, Lily continued navigating her own path toward healing. School remained challenging, with whispers still following her down the hallways. But she refused to let them define her. Her parents noticed a shift in her attitude, one that leaned more toward resilience than bitterness. One afternoon, as she sat coloring at the kitchen table, her mom asked, "How are you feeling lately, sweetheart?" Lily paused, her crayon hovering above the paper. "I'm okay," she said thoughtfully. "Sometimes I still think about what happened, but I don't want to stay mad forever. That doesn't feel good." Her mom smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. "You're so brave, you know that?" "I guess," Lily replied with a shrug, returning to her drawing. What she didn't say aloud was that forgiving John hadn't erased the pain entirely. It had simply given her permission to move forward. She understood now that holding on to anger wouldn't change anything. It would only keep her stuck in the past. As word spread about Lily's act of forgiveness, it sparked conversations throughout the community. Local news outlets picked up the story, focusing not on blame, but on the power of empathy and second chances. Parents discussed it around dinner tables, teachers brought it up in classrooms, and even strangers struck up conversations about it in grocery store lines. People were inspired by Lily's courage and John's willingness to take responsibility. It became clear that this incident wasn't just about two families, it was about all of them, collectively rethinking how they treated one another. Inspired by the growing dialogue, a group of concerned citizens organized a town hall meeting to address issues surrounding accessibility and inclusivity in public spaces. Officers from the police department attended, including John, who spoke openly about his experience. "What happened with Lily taught me how much I still have to learn," he admitted, his voice steady, despite the crowd watching him intently. "But I'm committed to doing better, for her, for my community, and for myself." His honesty resonated with many in the audience, earning nods of approval and quiet applause. Following the meeting, several initiatives were launched aimed at improving interactions between law enforcement and disabled individuals. Training sessions focused on de-escalation techniques, communication strategies, and fostering understanding. Community members volunteered to share their experiences, helping officers see the world through different lenses. For Robert, these developments brought a sense of satisfaction. While he initially sought accountability, he now saw something greater emerging, a chance to create meaningful change. He threw himself into supporting these efforts, using his connections within the FBI to bring in experts for workshops and seminars. His colleagues teased him about trading high-stakes cases for community outreach, but Robert didn't mind. To him, this work felt just as important, if not more so. Back at home, Lily noticed the subtle changes too. Some kids at school stopped teasing her, replaced instead by curious questions about her experiences. Though it took time, she began forming new friendships, ones built on mutual respect rather than pity or misunderstanding. Her dad encouraged her to speak up when she felt uncomfortable, reminding her that her voice mattered. "Don't ever let anyone make you feel small," he told her one evening as they played a board game together. "You're stronger than you think." By the end of the year, the ripple effects of that single accident reached farther than anyone anticipated. John returned to duty, though under close supervision and with additional training requirements. His fellow officers welcomed him back cautiously at first, but his renewed dedication soon earned their trust again. More importantly, he approached every situation with heightened awareness and care, determined never to repeat his mistake. Lily, for her part, blossomed into an advocate for others like her. Encouraged by her parents, she participated in a local storytelling event where she shared her experience, not to shame anyone, but to inspire kindness and understanding. When she finished speaking, the room erupted in applause, leaving her beaming with pride. Looking back, neither family could have predicted how much their lives would intertwine, or how profoundly one moment could shape their futures. For John, it was a lesson in humility and growth. For Robert, it reinforced the importance of balancing justice with compassion. And for Lily, it proved that even in pain there is power, in forgiveness, in resilience, and in choosing to see the good in others. Though scars remained, both visible and invisible, they served as reminders of lessons learned and bridges rebuilt. Together they showed their community and themselves that humanity at its core is capable of incredible transformation. Months passed and the city began to feel different, not in grand, sweeping ways, but in small, meaningful moments that hinted at progress. People noticed changes in how officers interacted with the community, especially when it came to those who were vulnerable or differently abled. John had become a quiet champion for these shifts, often volunteering his time to lead workshops on sensitivity training within the police department. His colleagues respected him not just for owning up to his mistakes, but also for taking concrete steps to ensure they wouldn't happen again. One chilly Saturday morning, John stood in front of a group of rookie officers at the precinct's training facility. The room buzzed with nervous energy as the recruits flipped through handouts about disability awareness. "I'm not here to lecture you," John began, pacing slowly across the front of the room. "I'm here because I made a mistake, a big one, and I want to help you avoid making the same kind of error." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "When I rushed into that intersection months ago, I thought I was doing the right thing. But looking back, I realized I wasn't thinking about the person I was trying to help. I didn't consider her needs, her fears, or even her perspective. All I saw was the danger, and I acted without fully understanding the situation." The room grew quieter as John spoke, his tone raw and unfiltered. He shared details about the accident, not to seek sympathy but to drive home the importance of patience and empathy. "Every day we put on this uniform and step out into the world, ready to protect and serve. But serving isn't just about enforcing laws. It's about connecting with people, listening to them, and treating them with dignity no matter what." At the end of the session, one of the rookies raised his hand hesitantly. "How do you deal with the guilt?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. John sighed, leaning against the podium. "You don't deal with it," he admitted. "It stays with you. But instead of letting it drag you down, you use it to push yourself forward, to be better, to learn more, to make amends where you can. That's the only way to live with it." Meanwhile, Lily continued finding strength in unexpected places. Her parents enrolled her in a local art class designed for kids with disabilities, hoping it might boost her confidence after everything she'd been through. At first, Lily was hesitant. She worried about being judged or standing out. But the instructor, a warm woman named Mrs. Anderson, quickly put her at ease. "Art is your voice," Mrs. Anderson told the class during their first session. "It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be yours." Lily took those words to heart. Over the weeks, she poured her emotions onto the canvas, creating vibrant paintings filled with bold colors and swirling patterns. One piece, titled "Forgiveness," depicted two figures standing side by side under a bright yellow sun, one figure reaching out, the other smiling softly. When her dad saw it hanging proudly on the fridge, he felt a lump rise in his throat. "This is beautiful," he said, pulling her into a tight hug. "You're amazing, kiddo." Encouraged by her teacher, Lily entered the painting into a community art show hosted by the city. To everyone's surprise, including her own, it won second place in the youth category. As she accepted her ribbon on stage, surrounded by applause, Lily couldn't stop grinning. For the first time in months, she felt truly seen, not as the girl who got hurt, but as someone capable of creating something beautiful. Back at school, things weren't perfect, but they were improving. Some kids still whispered behind her back, but others went out of their way to include her. One afternoon during recess, a boy named Alex approached her while she sat alone on a bench sketching in her notebook. "Hey," he said shyly, holding out a crumpled paper airplane. "Want to see if this flies?" Lily looked up surprised. She nodded, setting her notebook aside as Alex handed her the plane. Together they launched it into the air, laughing as it spiraled wildly before landing in a nearby bush. From that day on, Alex became a regular fixture in Lily's life, joining her for lunch and walking her to class. Though neither of them talked much about the accident, their friendship blossomed naturally, built on shared laughter and simple kindness. Her newfound friendships gave her parents hope. They watched as Lily slowly regained the spark she'd lost in the aftermath of the accident. Dinner table conversations shifted from discussions about forgiveness and resilience to debates over which superhero was the strongest. Lily firmly believed Wonder Woman reigned supreme. Even her teddy bear, once a constant companion, started spending more time propped up on her bed than clutched in her arms. For Robert, seeing Lily thrive reinforced his belief in the power of compassion over punishment. He continued working closely with both the police department and local organizations to improve accessibility and inclusivity in the community. His efforts caught the attention of higher-ups at the FBI, who invited him to spearhead a national initiative aimed at bridging gaps between law enforcement and marginalized groups. It was a daunting task, but Robert embraced it wholeheartedly, driven by the knowledge that real change started at the grassroots level. One evening, as he sat in his study reviewing materials for an upcoming conference, Lily knocked on the doorframe. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course," he replied, motioning for her to sit beside him. She hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Do you think Officer John will ever stop feeling bad about what happened?" Robert set his papers aside, turning to face her. "Probably not completely," he said honestly. "But that's okay. Sometimes remembering our mistakes helps us grow. And from what I've seen, he's using that pain to become a better person and a better officer." Lily nodded thoughtfully, chewing on her lip. "I'm glad I forgave him," she said finally. "It feels lighter." Robert smiled, ruffling her hair affectionately. "That's because forgiveness does that. It lifts the weight off your shoulders. You did something really brave, sweetheart." As Lily left the room, Robert leaned back in his chair, reflecting on her words. Forgiveness hadn't erased the past, but it had opened doors to new possibilities. For Lily, for John, and for the entire community. What began as a tragic accident had evolved into a story of redemption, resilience, and human connection. And yet, despite all the progress, there were still reminders of how fragile trust could be. A few weeks later, during a routine traffic stop, John encountered another pedestrian, a teenager with autism who froze in the middle of the road, overwhelmed by the noise and commotion. This time, John approached cautiously, crouching low to meet the boy's gaze and speaking in a calm, steady voice. "Hey, buddy," he said gently. "It's okay. Let's get you somewhere safe." The boy's mother rushed over, tears streaming down her face as she thanked John profusely. Watching the scene unfold from afar, a fellow officer patted John on the back. "Good job," he said simply. John nodded, though he knew he still had a long way to go. But each step forward, no matter how small, was proof that growth was possible. And in a world full of chaos and division, that was worth celebrating. As the months rolled on, the ripple effects of that fateful day continued to shape lives in ways no one could have predicted. The city itself seemed to breathe differently, more aware, more connected, and perhaps a little kinder. For John, every sunrise brought both challenges and opportunities to prove he was changing. He had become a familiar face at community events, especially those focused on supporting people with disabilities. Whether it was helping set up booths at a local fair or simply chatting with attendees, John made sure his presence was felt, not as an authority figure, but as someone genuinely interested in understanding others. One Saturday morning, John found himself volunteering at a charity run organized by a group advocating for accessibility rights. Families filled the park, some pushing strollers, others guiding wheelchairs along the designated paths. Children darted around, laughing and chasing bubbles, while parents cheered them on from the sidelines. It was a scene brimming with life and hope, and John couldn't help but feel a pang of gratitude for being part of it. Near the finish line, he spotted Lily and her family cheering loudly as participants crossed. She held up a handmade sign that read, "You got this," in bold letters, her bright smile lighting up the crowd. When she noticed John standing nearby, she waved enthusiastically. He hesitated for a moment before walking over, unsure if his presence would be welcome. But Lily's father, Robert, greeted him warmly, nodding toward the festivities. "Glad you're here," he said simply, his tone free of judgment or resentment. John knelt beside Lily, offering a small stuffed animal, a token of appreciation for her courage. "This is for you," he said softly. "Thanks for always inspiring us to do better." Lily beamed, hugging the toy tightly. "I told you I forgave you," she reminded him matter-of-factly. "Now you just need to keep doing good stuff." Her words struck a chord, leaving John momentarily speechless. Here was this young girl, wise beyond her years, reminding him that forgiveness wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something greater. As the race concluded and the park emptied, John lingered, watching families pack up their belongings and head home. Each interaction, each shared laugh, reinforced his belief that communities thrived when people chose empathy over indifference. Meanwhile, Lily's confidence soared as she embraced new experiences. Her art class had opened doors she never imagined, introducing her to a world where creativity knew no bounds. One day, her teacher announced an exciting opportunity, a mural project, aimed at beautifying the walls of the local library. Artists of all ages and abilities were invited to contribute, and Lily jumped at the chance to participate. For weeks, she worked alongside other volunteers, painting vibrant scenes of inclusion and unity. Swirling patterns depicted hands reaching out to one another, while bold colors highlighted diversity in its many forms. On the final day of the project, Lily stood back to admire the finished mural, her heart swelling with pride. A plaque mounted beneath it read, "Together we build a kinder world." The unveiling ceremony drew a large crowd, including several officers from the police department. John attended too, his chest swelling with emotion as he watched Lily explain her contributions to curious onlookers. When reporters asked her what inspired the design, she shrugged modestly. "I just wanted to show that everyone matters," she said. "Even if we're different, we can still work together." Her simple yet profound message resonated deeply, earning her applause and admiration from strangers and friends alike. For Robert and his wife, seeing their daughter stand tall and proud was nothing short of miraculous. They realized that through forgiveness and resilience, Lily had transformed not only her own life, but also the lives of those around her. Back at the police station, change was taking root as well. The sensitivity training sessions led by John became mandatory for all officers, sparking crucial conversations about bias, communication, and accountability. Some resisted at first, dismissing the workshops as unnecessary or overly sentimental. But as stories like Lily's were shared, and as officers witnessed firsthand the positive impact of empathy, the resistance began to fade. One evening, during a particularly lively discussion, a veteran officer named Mike raised his hand. "I gotta admit," he said gruffly, leaning forward in his chair, "I didn't think much of this stuff before. Thought it was all fluff. But after hearing John talk and seeing how he handles situations now, I'm starting to see things differently." The room fell silent as Mike continued. "We wear these badges because we want to protect people, but protecting isn't just about stopping bad guys. It's about making sure everyone feels safe no matter who they are or what they look like. And maybe Maybe we haven't been doing that as well as we should." His admission earned nods of agreement from his colleagues, signaling a shift in mindset. Slowly but surely, the culture within the department began to evolve. One conversation, one action, one decision at a time. At home, Robert reflected on the journey they'd all taken since that chaotic afternoon at the intersection. He thought about John's transformation, Lily's strength, and the countless individuals whose lives had been touched by their story. What started as a single incident had grown into a movement, proving that even in moments of pain, there was potential for growth and connection. One night, as he tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at him with sleepy eyes. "Dad," she murmured, clutching her teddy bear. "Do you think Officer John will ever forget me?" Robert smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "No, sweetheart," he replied gently. "I don't think he'll ever forget you or the lesson you taught him, and neither will anyone else." As he turned off the light and closed her bedroom door, Robert felt a quiet sense of peace. Forgiveness hadn't erased the past, but it had paved the way for healing and understanding. It reminded him that humanity at its core was capable of incredible compassion, even in the face of imperfection. Little did anyone know the story was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning to inspire others, spreading far beyond the borders of their small city and touching hearts across the nation. Through acts of kindness, bravery, and redemption, ordinary people were proving that extraordinary change was possible, one step, one choice, one moment at a time. The story of Lily and John didn't just stay within the boundaries of their small city. Like ripples spreading across a pond, it reached farther than anyone expected, touching lives in ways they could never have imagined. News outlets picked up on the narrative, not because it was sensational or dramatic, but because it carried a message of hope and humanity that resonated deeply with people everywhere. Social media platforms buzzed with posts about forgiveness, second chances, and the power of compassion. Strangers shared their own stories of struggle and redemption, inspired by what had happened between an officer and a young girl. One day, while scrolling through his phone during a break at work, John stumbled upon a video posted by a national news channel. It featured clips of Lily speaking at the art show, snippets of him leading training sessions, and interviews with community members who praised the changes they'd seen. The headline read, "From Tragedy to Transformation, a Story That Changed a City." Watching it left him speechless. He never thought his life or his mistakes would become a source of inspiration for others. Later that evening, he sat down with his notebook, jotting down thoughts and reflections. Writing had become a habit for him, a way to process everything he'd been through. "I used to think my job was just about enforcing laws," he wrote. "But now I see it's so much more than that. It's about connection, about seeing people, not cases, not problems, but real, living, breathing human beings." For Lily, the attention brought both challenges and opportunities. She loved sharing her story when asked, but sometimes she grew tired of being labeled as the brave girl or the one who forgave. At school, teachers occasionally singled her out for class discussions, asking her to talk about resilience or empathy. While she appreciated their intentions, she often wished they'd treat her like any other kid, someone who just wanted to play tag at recess or gossip about favorite movies with friends. Her parents noticed this shift and decided to give her space to define herself outside the shadow of the accident. They encouraged her to explore new hobbies, like joining a local drama club where kids put on plays for the community. To everyone's surprise, Lily thrived on stage. Her natural charm and expressive face made her a standout performer, and she quickly became known as the star of the group. During rehearsals for their latest production, a whimsical retelling of The Wizard of Oz, Lily landed the role of Dorothy. Standing center stage under the spotlight, she delivered her lines with confidence, drawing laughter and applause from the audience. After the final performance, as the cast took their bows, Lily scanned the crowd and spotted John sitting near the front row. Their eyes met briefly, and she gave him a shy wave before turning back to soak in the cheers. For John, Watching her shine felt like closure, not just for himself, but for the entire journey they'd been on together. In that moment, he realized how far they'd all come, from pain and misunderstanding to growth and gratitude. Meanwhile, Robert continued championing initiatives aimed at fostering inclusivity and understanding. His efforts gained national recognition, earning him invitations to speak at conferences and workshops across the country. One event, held in a bustling convention center, brought together leaders from various fields: education, law enforcement, healthcare, all united by a shared goal: creating safer, kinder communities. As Robert stood behind the podium, addressing hundreds of attendees, he felt a mix of pride and humility. "Change doesn't happen overnight," he said, his voice steady yet warm. "It starts with small actions, listening instead of assuming, reaching out instead of pulling away, choosing empathy over judgment, and sometimes it begins with a single act of forgiveness." He went on to share details of Lily's story, emphasizing not just the accident itself but the ripple effects it created. By the time he finished speaking, the room erupted in applause, with many people rising to their feet. Afterward, strangers approached him to shake his hand or thank him for his words. One woman, tears streaming down her face, hugged him tightly. "Your daughter is amazing," she whispered. "Thank you for reminding us that even in our darkest moments we can choose light." Back home, life settled into a rhythm of normalcy, but a richer, fuller version of it. John returned to full duties at the police department, though he remained active in community outreach programs. His colleagues joked that he was becoming a local celebrity, but they respected him deeply for using his experience to drive positive change. Even skeptical residents who once doubted law enforcement began warming up to officers, thanks in part to the trust John helped rebuild. Lily, too, found joy in everyday moments. She still carried her teddy bear everywhere, but now it served more as a reminder of strength rather than comfort. Her friendships blossomed, her confidence soared, and her artwork continued earning accolades. When asked about her future plans, she shrugged with a grin. "Maybe I'll be an artist, or an actress, or maybe I'll save the world," she said mischievously. "Who knows?" Her dad laughed, squeezing her shoulder affectionately. "Whatever you choose, I know you'll do it with kindness, and that's all that matters." Years later, when reflecting on that pivotal day, John often described it as the moment his life truly began. Not because of the accident itself, but because of the lessons it taught him and the connections it forged. He kept in touch with Lily's family, attending birthday parties and holiday gatherings like an extended member of their clan. On Lily's 16th birthday, she surprised him with a framed copy of the mural she'd helped paint years ago. Beneath it, she'd written, "Thanks for showing me we're stronger together." As he hung it proudly on his wall, John smiled, feeling grateful for the journey that had brought them here. Forgiveness wasn't easy. It required courage, patience, and an unwavering belief in the goodness of people. But it also offered something priceless: healing, understanding, and the chance to build bridges where walls once stood. And so, the story came full circle, not with dramatic endings or grand gestures, but with quiet acts of love and resilience. Through their struggles and triumphs, Lily, John, and everyone touched by their journey proved that humanity at its best is capable of extraordinary things. It's messy, imperfect, and sometimes painful, but it's also beautiful, hopeful, and endlessly transformative. As the years rolled on, the story of Lily and John continued to evolve, weaving itself deeper into the fabric of their community and beyond. What started as a single moment at a busy intersection had become a living testament to the power of forgiveness, resilience, and human connection. It wasn't just about them anymore. It was about everyone who had been inspired to take a step toward kindness, no matter how small. One crisp autumn morning, John found himself standing in front of a crowd gathered for the unveiling of a new public art installation. The centerpiece was a towering sculpture made of interlocking metal pieces, each one etched with words like empathy, courage, and unity. At its base lay a plaque that read, dedicated to all who choose compassion over judgment. As he scanned the faces of those assembled, families, students, local leaders, he couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by how far they'd come. The artist behind the project, none other than Lily herself, stood beside him, beaming with pride. Now a teenager, she'd grown into a confident young woman with dreams bigger than anyone could have imagined. Her passion for art hadn't waned. In fact, it had only deepened, fueling her desire to create pieces that sparked conversations and inspired change. This particular sculpture was her magnum opus, a culmination of everything she'd learned since that fateful day years ago. When it came time for her to speak, Lily stepped up to the microphone, gripping the sides nervously, before finding her voice. "This isn't just my work," she began, glancing around at the sea of familiar faces. "It belongs to everyone who's ever believed in second chances or reached out when it felt hard. It's for people like Officer John, who taught me that mistakes don't define us. It's what we do after them that matters." Her words hung in the air, resonating deeply with the audience. When she finished speaking, applause erupted, echoing through the park where the sculpture now stood. John wiped away a tear, feeling an indescribable mix of pride and gratitude. He remembered the scared little girl he'd once met, bruised and shaken, and marveled at the strong, compassionate young woman she'd become. In many ways, she had saved him too, not just from his guilt but from losing sight of why he chose this path in the first place. Back at home, Robert watched footage of the event later that evening, his heart swelling with emotion. His daughter's journey, from victim to advocate, had transformed not only her life but also his perspective on justice and humanity. He realized now that true strength didn't lie in punishing wrongdoers. It lay in giving people the tools and opportunities to grow. And John, despite everything, had proven himself worthy of that chance. Robert's efforts to bridge gaps between law enforcement and marginalized communities continued to gain traction, earning him accolades and respect nationwide. Yet, despite the recognition, he remained grounded, always crediting Lily and John for inspiring the movement. "They're the ones who showed us what's possible," he often said during interviews. "All I did was listen." His wife, watching silently from the sidelines, couldn't help but smile. She saw the toll the accident had taken on their family, but she also witnessed the beauty that emerged from it. Forgiveness hadn't erased the pain, but it had paved the way for healing and understanding, a lesson she hoped others would carry forward. For John, life regained a sense of balance, though he never forgot the lessons he'd learned. Every day on patrol reminded him to slow down, to truly see the people he served. Whether it was helping an elderly man cross the street or calming a panicked child lost in the crowd, he approached each interaction with patience and care. His colleagues noticed the difference, often turning to him for advice on handling difficult situations. One afternoon, while responding to a call about a missing child, John encountered a mother frantic with worry. Her son, who had autism, had wandered off during a family outing. Instead of rushing in with sirens blaring, John took a moment to assess the situation. He knelt beside the boy when they finally found him hiding under a tree, speaking softly and offering reassurance. "Hey, there, buddy," he said gently. "You gave your mom quite a scare. Let's get you back to her, okay?" The boy nodded, taking John's hand without hesitation. Later, when the mother thanked him profusely, tears streaming down her face, John simply smiled. "Just doing my job," he replied humbly. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. It was about creating trust, one person, one moment at a time. Meanwhile, Lily embraced her role as a changemaker, using her platform to amplify voices often overlooked. She traveled to schools and community centers, sharing her story and encouraging others to find strength in vulnerability. "Don't let fear stop you from forgiving," she told a group of students during one such visit. "And don't let shame keep you from trying again. We're all works in progress." Her message struck a chord, especially among kids who felt different or misunderstood. They wrote letters, sent drawings, and shared their own stories of overcoming challenges. For Lily, these connections became a source of endless inspiration. reminding her that even the smallest acts of kindness could ripple outward, touching, lives in ways she might never fully know. Years later, when asked about the legacy of their story, both John and Lily agreed it wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about the quiet moments, the smiles exchanged, the hands extended, the bridges built, that truly mattered. Their journey proved that humanity, at its core, is resilient. It stumbles, falters, and sometimes falls, but it also rises, learns, and grows. And so the tale of a policeman, a disabled girl, and a father seeking justice didn't end with closure or resolution. Instead, it lived on in the hearts of those it touched, spreading hope and reminding everyone of the boundless potential within us all. Through forgiveness and compassion, they showed the world that even in our darkest moments, light can prevail, if only we choose to let it.